On a global scale, the Australian music industry certainly punches above our weight. We have a small population and geographically isolated from the rest of the world. However, somehow, for decades, even before the internet, we have consistently been an industry which has exported the biggest stars in the world, again and again. Think Kylie Minogue, In Excess, 5 Seconds of Summer, Sia, Tame Impala, Troye Sivan, Flume, the list goes on. One of the managers at the forefront of the next wave of Australian superstars is Regan Lethbridge, co-founder of Lemon Tree Music, who manages Tones and I, Tash Sultana, Pierce Brothers and more. Simply put, Regan seems to have a knack of finding talented buskers on the streets of Australia and turning them into millionaires. What he has achieved with his co-founder David Morgan is nothing short of remarkable. Together, they have turned a humble independent music management business into a global powerhouse. How has he done it? I'm Luke GIRGIS, and we will be unpacking this with Regan on this episode of Fear at the Top. Regan, welcome.
Hey Luke, thanks so much. That was a very, very kind intro.
Well, it's all true. And look, we're on recording this on the 11th of May. I think this is the first day Rolling Stone magazine hits the shelves. It's the first ever issue. I got it here. Have you got your copies yet? Has it been delivered?
No, I'm still waiting on mine in the mail. I'm going to run down to the store today and just try and buy one. Hopefully there's one there.
You're getting a lot in the mail. But anyway, it's pretty exciting. This is the best I've ever seen her look. It's freaking great. It's amazing.
Incredible. Julia nailed that shoot. Yeah, Tones has got hers. I know that, which is just amazing.
Oh, that's awesome. So I'm going to play a bit of a cut when Nova interviewed Tones and spoke about how she feels about it. And then I'd love to get your thoughts on not only this cover, but where Tones' career is at right now.
I am so stoked that Rolling Stone Australia is back, and we just want to say on behalf of the Fitzy and Whipper Show, great front cover. That must have been a big honour for you, Tones.
Yeah, that's huge. I actually got the first magazine the other day. So
what are you doing with it? You're framing it, or what are you going to do?
Well, I said to them, can they send me a blown up picture of the front cover on a canvas? So they sent me that, which is my I put it on the wall.
Yeah.
But they've sent me a magazine, and that's going to be something that I'll keep forever and look back at that. And to be on the first one back is,
it's amazing.
You always feel like it's not going to be me, obviously, but why not?
So Regan, they say when you have success with an artist the first time, it's luck. But if you can do it twice, you're actually good at your job. So not only have you done it twice, the second time around with Tones and I, you've absolutely shattered records. So Tones' Dance Monkey, I think, is the most streamed song by a female artist globally. Is that correct?
It is, yeah. On Spotify, it's the most streamed song by a female, and I think it's 7th on the all-time list. It's had 7 billion streams across all platforms, which is just absolutely insane.
Billion with a B. So what do you put your success down to?
Having an incredible team, first and foremost. We're nothing without a team. Like everything we've done from the early days to literally to today, we're just incredibly focused on building great teams around our artists, whether they're co-managers or agents or great labels or, just generally good people. And when you've got everyone kind of swimming in that same direction, it can be just incredibly powerful. It can be unstoppable, especially when you get brilliant artists, writing insane tunes that kind of resonate with the world. It's that's the key to it all. It's not one person. It's not one thing. It's not luck. It's just a mixture of a bunch of stuff. It's just all the elements kind of combining.
So you mentioned the team, and I think both Tones and Tash are with Sony, is that correct?
Yeah, so Tash is distro on Sony here and then a license for the world, but independent on Mum and Pop in America. And Tones is a Sony distro for Australia and New Zealand and on a license with Elektra for the world. Both have got their own labels licensed through those respective labels.
So obviously controlling your own masters from day one on both. Why did you do it that way? Why not on a standard record deal and really cash in on huge advances and things like that, which you could do with these artists?
Yeah, I mean, just from the outset, we're very passionate. Dave, my business partner, and I have always been very passionate about wanting our artists to have as much creative control as possible. It's obviously incredibly important, and to own their work, own their masters, and just have that sense of control and ownership is everything. And a lot of the artists that we have worked with are obviously former buskers. So in that respect, it's just makes sense. And we've never looked at the short term. We've always thought, you could take crazy money up front and all that sort of stuff, but it's very short-sighted. We've always looked, 3 to 5 years down the track. We'd prefer to go for kind of better splits and ownership of work rather than huge upfront payments and that sort of stuff. It's a personal preference of how we like to do things, and it works. So we've never kind of detoured from that.
Do you feel like you were able to do that because the artist had such success so quickly? And if they hadn't had that, you might have had to look for a record deal?
Oh, absolutely. And that's the thing. There's no one size fits all. I mean, that's the beauty of music, and that's the beauty of the gig that we're in. It's purely what was right for Tash at the time. I think it was at the start of 2016. And it took, I think, something like 9 months to do those deals, and we didn't rush it. And it was quite a complex process. But at the end of the day, we wanted the best result for our client, and I'm confident we got that. So you just get that forever income and really great splits, and obviously the ownership. And shared a viral video on Facebook. It started there, and obviously with the busking background, whereas Tones was through the Unearthed and through Triple J, and it just kind of exploded a lot quicker. And obviously you get more leverage the bigger your artist is, and all that sort of stuff. But at the end of the day, the principle remains the same. You want what's best for them, but you've also got to be respectful of the fact that the people that you're working with and the partners that you're going into business with, I mean, to give them some kind of skin in the game gets them more invested. You get more of their time, but the key is getting them emotionally invested. And once they can see who the artist is and get to know them and all that sort of stuff, that's when you get that extra 10%, and that's when things can just go crazy, when the whole engine room's engaged.
And how do you get a label like Sony, who have, quite a big roster and quite a big team, how do you get them as a manager emotionally invested?
Well, I mean, it's not hard when you've got good people that you work with. I mean, all of the people that we work with, all of our amazing artists that we have the honor of working with, they're all good people, they're good human beings. So obviously it's just a lot of early meetings and just forming those relationships. And Dennis Hanlon and the team at Sony, in my opinion, got the best label here by a country mile, and they do incredible things with a bunch of different acts. And we're very fortunate to have a great relationship, and with Margaret and Paul, and just with everyone there. So it's more about just getting them along early. We pride ourselves on setup, so that can happen, 12 months before a deal's done. You start planting seeds of where you see the artist potentially signing, and you cast the net pretty wide, and you can soon see when people jump. It's kind of takes shape very early. It's hard to explain. A setup can take anywhere from 6 to 18 months, basically, until you're 100% happy and you've got that right global team. But it's something that we've never rushed, and we're super proud of all the setups with our artists, and it's feeling good. There's a lot of work to do, but it's feeling good.
How do you seed artists throughout the industry? Is it simply sending some tracks to some people around the world and seeing who bites, or what's your strategy on that?
It's a bit of both. Obviously, you get inquiries, you field inquiries, you do early calls, you do late calls, depending on time zones. That's the brutal part for the first year or so. And your global network that Lemon Tree has built over the last 7 or 8 years or so, that you work with people that you trust and that you like, and that that can move the needle in respective markets. We've got a guy in Europe called Dave Toothius at Plug and Play, who we do a lot of our stuff through, and he's just brilliant at being on ground and really helping break the Germanys and the Netherlands and of the world. It's essential, I think. And obviously Jadam with Tash in North America, and Jackson with Tones and all that sort of stuff. So it's all about the team, and it's all about making sure that they've just on it super early, I guess. It's hard to explain, but it takes time, and it's one that it's just forever a work in progress. There's no perfect formula, and if there was, everyone would be doing it. But it's yeah. I
find it curious and also inspired that you decided to use Jadon Comerford as the North American co-manager, because he's an Australian manager, and I guess the default position is, if you want to get a co-manager for North America, you find a manager in North America. Why did you choose to partner with Jadon in that way?
At the time, he was living in North America, from memory. When we started texting, he was spending a lot of time there anyway. And obviously, the success he had with Vance Joy in North America was amazing. And I think I played like a Unified Golf Day or something and just met him and just got a nice vibe. So I just sent him a text and I asked him for advice on something when things were going crazy, and it just made a lot of sense. And obviously we chatted to Dave and put the question to him. But again, it was one of those very natural, organic things that wasn't forced, and it just felt like the right move. And, you know, still to this day, we've never had a bad word. It just feels good, and it feels like everyone's got the same kind of vision. And he knows a lot of people over there. I mean, I remember being backstage at Coachella with him, and it was ridiculous. You know what I mean? So it's just having that connection base and that foundation. And he spends a lot of time there. Obviously, we've been on a bunch of planes over the last few years as well. So again, there's no right or wrong. It's just what's worked for us. But yeah, having those relationships with people on ground is definitely very beneficial, because you can't get to every single meeting and all that sort of stuff. Although with everything that's going on with the pandemic, I think after what's happening now, there'll be a lot more Zooming and Hangouts and all that sort of stuff for sure. It's
the ultimate leveler, I think, for Australian managers, because previously you were a competitive advantage if you were at the pub, at the people's offices, just with all the people in the industry in the States and the UK. But now it doesn't matter if you're 1 meter away or 10 meters away from somebody down the road or whatever, or you're in Australia, you literally have the same opportunity to communicate and build a relationship as anyone. So I think it's a bit of a competitive advantage, this COVID thing, globally for us as Australian managers.
Oh, for sure. And I mean, I live, half an hour north of Byron. I've been here for 4 years. It's like, even though the heartbeat of the industry is in Sydney, you just you go there a fair bit, and we just live on the phone and live on these hangouts. And that's always been the way for us. That's been the way since the get-go. So, being there in person is obviously incredibly important, but the real planning and all that sort of stuff starts for us about 18 months before the gig actually happens, or, minimum a couple of years before a release, like an album or something comes out. So it's all about planning and playing the long game, and not rushing stuff, which it took us so long to learn. And I'm still impatient and I still want to rush, but trying to be proactive, not reactive, and all that sort of stuff. So yeah, it seems to work, and it doesn't matter where. We've obviously got an office in Melbourne and we've got an office up here, but we've never felt like we needed to move to LA and buy a suit and run around and do meetings. It's just not what we're about as a company, and not how we want to support our artists in that way.
How often are you in LA in the UK?
Last year, I think it was maybe 4 times. A lot, yeah. I've done an annual trip to UK, Europe with Tash for the last 5 years or so. Last year, there's a lot of running around with Tones all over the world. So it just varies. It depends on if you're setting up a release, if you're looking to do deals, or just to be there to support your artists. If they've got a big promo look, like we were in New York, Jackson, Dave and I recently for the Fallon stuff that Tones did, and obviously her theatre run in Europe before it all got pulled. So it's that I personally find it quite hard to work on the road, because you're always traveling, you're always jet lagged, and we've got a very set way of doing things with scheduled calls and with living on the phone when you're on a tour bus, or when you've got to be at a gig or whatever. It is quite difficult. So, but you just make it all work. You find a way to make it work, and it's that old adage, there's a solution for everything, and that's kind of what we stick by and go off.
A lot of times when managers have their artists blow up overseas, they do look to get a co-manager in North America or the UK. However, the underlying anxiety that Australian managers have, particularly younger ones, newer ones, are that we'll engage a big manager overseas, and one of two things might happen. They'll just ignore us and we won't get anything done, and we've just signed the management over and it's a pain in the ass. Or two, things go really well and then we get boxed out of the deal and we're no longer managing this band anymore because this bigger manager's kind of kicked us out. Do you share any of those anxieties? Do you have a view on how that sort of connection should be done? Do you feel like it's necessary?
I guess it's all depending on where you're at with your personal level of experience. Like if you feel like you're fairly well versed in breaking an act, or you're confident enough to handle it by yourself, because that's the great thing about a co-management scenario is there's 2 of you or 3 of you or 4 of you, and when there's that kind of scenario, you can share the load a bit in terms of mainly the travel, because the travel can be brutal, especially if you've got young kids and you're missing home and all that sort of stuff. But the strengths and weaknesses scenario is one that I always use. Like Dave's really good at stuff that I'm terrible at, and and vice versa. So
what are those things? What is Dave good at that you're not, and vice versa?
it's just, I mean, a lot of the tech stuff, all the rollout stuff, like just a lot of the admin stuff, just basically, yeah, he's got a nous for the things that, I don't know, it's just a natural fit, and it's we've kind of naturally established who does what, where I do more of the deal setup and the structure and a lot of the strategy, and I still do the plugging to the J's, and it's more of a relationships thing. But that's just us. I mean, if you can find that person in someone else that can have that value add, that we've been fortunate enough to find with the Dave T's and the Jaddens and the Jacksons, then that's an absolute no-brainer to dive in and sacrifice some of your commission for that, because at the end of the day, you're working for your client, and that's what's better for your client. And I don't agree with the attitude of you've got to just not do co-management because you're going to lose some of whatever your percentage is or all that sort of stuff. It's more about what is best for your client, what is the value add that you can bring to the table, and are you adding value every day? And that's what we try and do, not just with fielding inquiries and filtering stuff, but also creating that opportunity. And if you've got someone that can help you do that when you're asleep in Australia and they're in Europe or UK or America, then absolutely you should do it. But it's got to be the right fit, and you've got to build that trust, and you've really got to it's got to feel right. It's something you definitely shouldn't rush into.
What are your deals like with your artists? So a typical management deal is 20% of all income, and then there's a fixed term for X amount of years, and there's a post-term clause. How are your deals normally structured? Do you look for in perpetuity post-term rights? Do you also have any master equity? Like, is there anything different in your deals that give you and your business more security?
There's nothing like that. No, we always, from the outset, try and go for 5 years, because we're big believers of it takes a year or two to really set things up and get rolling. And then once you're on a roll for that another year or two, then you don't want to give that away to anyone else. But that's not the end of the world. We've got no master equity, and we've got no nothing like that for the sunset clauses or anything like that. They're pretty stock standard in that regard, and we hedge our bets on the fact that if we do a really good job and we do what we say what we're going to do, that the artist will stick around. And so far so good in that respect. But yeah, from us it is pretty stock standard, and we don't try and sell a dream either. We just really try and bring their vision to life instead of saying this is what you should do. It's more like, what do you want to do, and then it's our job to make that happen. It's not a matter of us coming in and saying this is what you have to do, and no, you can't do that. It's like, we advise that you do this, and you need to meet this person, or and all that sort of stuff. But it's all about, it's their career at the end of the day, and you're amplifying it and you're connecting the dots in the right way that doesn't hinder their career, or you need to keep them in brand if they're a Triple J thing, or if it's a big pop commercial thing, then that's a whole other kettle of fish. So I don't know, we need more time, but basically there's just no one size fits all kind of thing in music, and that's the beauty of it. And that's the sort of stuff we love, because there's no rule book that's out the window. And the more we can swim against the current, or turn left when everyone else turns right, I used to always say that, it just feels good. Like if everyone's doing the same thing, do something else.
Do you feel like there's an inherent risk in your business if you don't push for those sort of equity in the masters or longer post-term clauses? There's a massive movement at the moment for post-term clauses being in perpetuity. For those who don't know, post-term clauses are, if an artist leaves a management business, the manager could continue to earn from all the work that they've done. If it's a 5-year deal, they can continue to get paid from all the records released within those 5 years for however long the post-term clause is. Generally speaking, they've been, in the last decade, I'd say they've been anywhere between 3 to 5 years. But now managers are now pushing for in perpetuity, which means they're getting post-term revenue for the rest of their lives. And the argument for that is that the managers did all the work. The artists will continue to get paid for the rest of their lives. The managers also need some long-term protection on their income as well, and have an asset, and they're as involved in the business as the artist. So therefore, they should be as looked after long-term, even if the artist leaves the manager for, maybe the grass is greener, or maybe they think the grass is greener, or they just had a bad day, or whatever. And so it gives those managers a lot more security, because at the end of the day, the manager is the most important person in the artist team. They're often the punching bag when things go wrong, and when the things go right, it's it's rarely the manager that gets all the credit. So that's why there's this big, post-term movement. And I think you see a lot of managers going, right, I'm not going to sign your management unless I can also sign your master, so I have some protection and I'm just not putting my whole life at risk, for potentially you sticking around on your word. I mean, what's your view on that?
I definitely understand it and respect it. It's just not our personal view of how we've done things. We traditionally have always done relatively short-term deals for our artists in terms of labels and publishing, all that sort of stuff, as I said earlier, with full ownership. So, I mean, I can see why people do that. I understand if a manager of 10 or 20 years experience is breaking something from absolute scratch, and they've got a huge hand in that. Like I absolutely see that, see why they would do that. But we personally don't agree with it and don't do it. And again, like back in the day, labels used to have a lot more power, and now managers and the artists have got a lot of the power. So, and in turn, what comes with that is workload. So, it's the A to Z that managers do now, and it is a 24/7 gig. And so I certainly see the side of what you're saying and where people are coming from for that. We just don't do it under our roof.
So then what's your retirement plan or exit strategy, or what is, 40 years from now, 50 years from now, 20 years from now, whatever it is for you, when you have dreams of retiring, what is that plan?
I guess stepping back in some way, like still being involved in bigger picture stuff, and ideally still, working with artists and working with people that you helped in the early days. And I realize that things come to a natural end, and for whatever reason, people go their own ways. But hopefully lots of golf and surfing, and we would have done well enough while we're actually managing those artists to warrant whatever it is or whenever it is we retire. But I mean, personally, I like the idea of always having my toes in the water in some degree, whether it's sitting on a board or being director of something, or I don't know. I don't know what I'd do if I had nothing to do. I'm obsessive compulsive, and I just have to do something. So the day that I stop doing that, I'll probably be dead, to be honest. But it's a good question, and I don't know. I just turned 36. I'm going grey already, but yeah, I probably need to start thinking about that sort of stuff more. But I'm not interested in signing artist masters or having in perpetuity clauses in contracts for sure.
So no aspiration at all of starting a record company?
We've got a JV label with Sony where we just find the talent and sign it, and then Sony pays for recording and marketing, all that sort of stuff. But yeah, our focus from day one has always been management. My passion is management. It's what we're reasonably good at, and I don't want to cast the net so wide that we're doing a million things and then we're pretty shit at all of them. I really want to focus on, artist development, global management, and breaking artists, like on a serious level. Like we take it super serious. Like we realize that it's been the dream since they were a kid, and we realize, how hard they've worked to get there, I guess, like with all the busking or with all the songwriting in their room. Like it's not something that we take for granted, and we take it incredibly seriously. So, there's more things that we want to do for sure. There's more companies that we'd like to start, but we're not rushing into that. We didn't even get our first staff member, I don't think, for the first 2 or 3 years, and we're still a relatively small company with 7 staff. So we're just trying to build it slowly. We're not interested in having endless amounts of staff or acts. We just want a really refined roster and a small, team that we trust and that we love, and that's just how we operate and how we do things. And Dave and I personally still take on a lot of work. It's not the old school style of sign it and then handle everything. And we've got a great setup with our day managers and all that sort of stuff who do an incredible job. So, again, it's just an each to their own thing, man, I think.
You mentioned that you took 2 years to hire your first staff member, and that's always quite a critical moment as any management business starts to grow. It's always a nervous one, usually. Not always, but a lot of times it's nervous in that, shit, like, what if I hire this person and in 6 months we run out of money and the act doesn't take off and all of this? Like, did you go through the same thing, or did you have enough burn rate to know that you're good?
No. Yeah, of course, man. I mean, yeah, we were on baked beans for like the first, I think, 3 winters of Lemon Tree. Like, I'm serious. I'm deadly serious. Like were pulling out the minimal and we were just getting by. But because of our busking background, because we played professionally for 10 years or so, because of that background, I think at one point we were paying ourselves like $50 each a week back in the band days. So we learned how to live off nothing. And when it was time to invest in that first staffer, it was an incredibly important time. But yeah, I was nervous all the time. And every time winter rolled around, I'd shit myself because, you know, you want to do right by your artists and invest everything you have and all the time that you have. But at the same time, you know, like it is your time and your, you know, those commissions to keep the lights on. And so, yeah, it was a very scary time. It's still a scary time. Like, I mean, with what's happening around the world right now, I mean, everyone's in the same boat and there's certainly a lot more people worse off than me. I mean, I'd hate to be in lockdown in India, for example, but, you know, we had millions and millions of live dates just scrapped in 2 or 3 days. It was a huge shock and, you know, to our artists. And, I don't know, you just got to find a way to get through it and make sure that everyone's all right and looking after your staff. I read this Richard Branson quote, I don't even know where it was, but it's always stuck with me, look after the staff and they'll look after you and all that sort of stuff. And that's just been a huge thing for us, just making sure that everyone's okay, our artists, our staff, and just trying to keep everything afloat and, you know, and staying within the means of what you started out to do, which was to be a great management company and try and change the dial and move the needle for your acts.
Has anyone at Lemon Tree taken pay reductions or been stood down or reduced hours because of the whole COVID scenario?
Nothing like that. No, when it first happened, we just sent an email to everybody and just wanted to reassure everybody that everyone's job's safe and we'll get through this as a unit essentially. And as things went on, we decided to drop the Friday for our staff without not a pay cut or anything, just purely take the Friday to be with your family or do what it is you need to do and make the most of just having a really big Monday to Thursday. But if your client reaches out to you direct, you've got to do whatever needs to be done. But it's basically like a longer weekend while we're so grounded from touring and stuff because that's what our business is built on. But yeah, no redundancies, no staff cuts, no wages cuts, no nothing like that.
So your staff are now working 4 days a week but being paid for 5?
Yeah.
Amazing. And do you have the confidence to do that because you've had such prosperity in the past and so it's going to give you that burn over the next, say, year and a half or whatever? Or are you feeling like it's going to come back quicker than maybe others think?
I guess it's just first and foremost looking after your staff and looking after their mental health and wellbeing because they're stuck at home. We don't have that office vibe. It's just uncertain times. So it's just a tiny little thing that we thought we could do to help, basically. And yeah, I don't have a crystal ball. I've got no idea what's going on. I know that this summer there'll be potentially a lot more Aussie lineups at festivals, which is going to be a great thing. But in terms of Europe and America, yeah, we've got no idea. I mean, we've basically cleared the idea of any of our acts going overseas this year. And yeah, when it's ready to roll next year and it's safe to do so, we'll be there. You know, we'd love to, but we don't want to be guinea pigs at the same time. And obviously we want our artists and clients to be safe. So I think everyone's just kind of, you know, in the same boat and just waiting to see what happens. But we've just got all of our artists recording and writing as much as possible and just assisting in that way as much as possible. And that's why we've had so many releases lately. It's not a coincidence, you know. Everyone's stuck at home, just creating and doing what they're doing. So that's a silver lining in all this craziness, I guess.
Have you done any forecasting or guesstimates on if the revenue lost from international touring will be made up by the extra demand you'll have for your talent, who are likely to be festival headliners if people can only choose from Australian artists? If the demand for your Australian roster and the Australian festivals goes up?
I know the numbers in terms of what was live lost overseas for our clients. Yeah, obviously can't go into details, but it was, as I said, it was in the millions. It was incredibly significant and there's no way we can get that back. We're essentially moving the windows from this year to next year. And yeah, if we're lucky, we might get a little bit back for this summer, for a couple of our acts who are headliners and then hopefully a bunch of the other acts with the all-Australian lineups. But I think what's going to happen there is, it sounds rosy, but I think ticket prices when the headlines and stuff start up are going to be a lot cheaper. I don't know if you're sitting in a theatre, if it's going to be every second or every third seat that they can sell. There's going to be a lot of parameters kind of put in place that I think revenue, regardless of how you look at it, is going to be drastically cut. So there's been a huge focus on releasing and momentum and getting our streams up as much as possible. Because as I said, live is our bread and butter. It's what we've built our business on. It's what we know how to do well with our acts globally, and that in turn shows that you are a real artist. You're around for a while, and you're not kind of a flash in the pan. So, and that's again why we would like working with buskers, because they love working so hard. They love playing music, and they love putting in that extra mile. And we just take that formula and plug it into a global network and put a good plan around it. But a lot of our artists, Tones especially, all the vision for creative is all her. It's all in her mind, her marketing, all that sort of stuff. And in that respect, she's a genius. And it's our job to amplify that and join the dots with the team and not muck around with that too much. Whereas other artists need a bit more of a hand with that, So I guess to answer your question, we've done some forecasting, but I don't think we're ever going to make up what we lost for sure. But as I said at the start, everyone's in the same boat, and I'm never going to whinge about this. Like, there's a lot more people far worse off. But the live industry especially has been decimated. The business that we've got with Jadden and Tash, Lonely Lanes Agency, that was flying, and now there's barely a heartbeat. It's flatlined, and we'll just bide our time and then circle back next year and come back and make it our best year ever, so we can make up for this year, hopefully.
You mentioned the booking agency that you started with Tash and Jadden. Can you tell us a bit about that business?
Yeah, so it's called Lonely Lanes Agency, so LLA, and the idea came about from Tash early last year. It was actually a couple of years ago. She's always just mentioned she wanted to do her own thing and wanted to do it with me. And we basically wanted a bit of business nous behind it, and we asked Jadden to get involved as well to really help with that kind of thing, with in terms of the setup. And we launched we're a very small roster, and Harry Moore, who's one of the great young agents of Australia, fortunately agreed to come on board, and he looks after incredible acts like Ocean Alley and Clues and obviously Pierce Brothers and all that sort of stuff. So we started off and running, and Tones and I obviously, and obviously Tash is on the books, who I still book. So we started with a very small but kind of powerful roster, and then Ziggy Alberts came on board. We had a meeting with him. He's an incredible talent, and just finished like a tour that did 48,000 tickets. So it's been a very short period of time, but we're incredibly proud of what we've done. But yeah, we were flying, and we were very, very excited. So now it's about kind of stepping back and going, well, it is what it is right now. How can we plan for 2021 and come back even stronger? That's kind of our mentality. But and before that, I worked at an agent at 123 Agency for 6 years or so, and that was great and learned a lot. But it was just time to do my own thing, basically. So I respectfully put a notice and moved on.
It's such an amazing agency that's sort of come together what seems to be overnight, like a bunch of very talented music industry professionals with one of the biggest Australian artists pull together a very high impactful roster, like you said, and now have a very formidable agency almost overnight. Not a slow build, it just happened. Were you guys worried about alienating other agencies in the market because now you've created a competitor? A lot of these agencies also own festivals. Was that ever in consideration?
That's a good question. It was definitely in consideration. It's definitely, enters the thought process. But at the end of the day, if artists want to get together, or if it feels right for change, no matter what industry you're in, and you got to follow your gut and follow your heart. And I still remember the early conversations with Tash, and it just didn't feel right. So it was either you stay in there, it's like staying in an unhappy marriage, or you move on. It's like we really felt strongly that it was time to do our own thing. And of course, all that stuff at the festivals came to play. But if you're good enough and you get the runs on the board by building your own headline tickets, like Tash is an $89 to $120 ticket or something. Ziggy's numbers are getting up there. If you build your own ticket, get runs on the board yourself, you almost can't become undeniable to those festivals, in my opinion, because you're a value add. And as long as you don't overplay the market, and a lot of our acts have got overseas ambitions, so they're overseas a lot anyway, then if they play their festival, then they're going to be a huge value add at whatever time slot they choose, because you do the math on how many tickets, and if they sold 8,000 tickets up the road at the start of the year, well, then at $80 or whatever it is, then they're a huge value add. So yeah, all that stuff we thought about, but we decided just to go for it and back ourselves. And it's something that I'm super proud of, and I'd do it again in a heartbeat. But I just want that agency to really realize its potential. And I think in the coming years, we're going to be in a really great position, and it's got to be fun. It's a bunch of amazing talent, and we're excited for the future. I mean, those little hurdles like that, you can't think like that in terms of, of course you think like that for business, but in terms of like ambition and where you want to go and how you want to get there, you just got to work as hard as you can, and that kind of stuff just works itself out. Do your own tours and build your own ticket.
Often when an artist is in an unhappy marriage, and whether it be a record company, a management business, an agency, whatever, they leave one company and they go to another. You guys have left one company and started your own entity. And so that makes me think one of two things. Either you felt like you could do what the other agencies were doing better, or you could do it different. So which one is it? And can you unpack what it is that you can do better or different than the other agencies in Australia?
We left 123 Agency purely on the fact that we wanted to do things differently, not better. Like, I can't badmouth them in any kind of way or whatsoever. And I sincerely wish them all the best. We just wanted to do things different. That's it. It's pure and simple. We wanted to have more of that ownership and more of that control. And it's just waking up in the morning and knowing that it's yours. It's your thing. And when you're in the engine room and you're working as hard as you possibly can for your client and vice versa, that was the main reason. It was just like, and to be honest, maybe we should have done a little bit earlier, and we hung around for loyalty, So looking back, maybe would have done things done a couple of things differently, but at the same time, I'm really proud of how it was handled and how we kind of moved on.
How do you compare agencies in Australia versus agencies overseas? Because you would have had a lot of exposure to both. Like, what do you see any differences in how international agencies operate or their influence versus how the Australians are set up?
Yeah, I mean, obviously it's just significantly bigger. In every country, you've got a Triple J essentially. Like, you got your 3FM in Netherlands, you got your Eins Live in Germany, and those stations all back festivals. So we've got that with Triple J here and Falls and Splendor and Groove in the Mood, but it's just on a significantly bigger scale. So I guess operational wise, they're more staffed up. Paul Boswell, who's Tones and Tash's agent and Pierce Brothers agent in the UK, Europe, I hope he doesn't see this and hate me, but I think he's in the 70s. He's just been around forever. He's got that extra edge of age and expertise, and just he knows everyone. He knows how to build in different markets. So that would be the only main difference. It's significantly bigger. But in terms of how they run and how they do things, I mean, it's a very similar setup to us. We're starting very small and not trying to take over the world. We just want to nail Australia, New Zealand, and really get a strong foothold in Asia, which Harry's done an incredible job of that already with getting acts over there. So I guess all in all, it's pretty similar, really. And yeah, it's not rocket science. You just got to have great talent, get to work early and finish late, and get to work.
So Regan, there's going to be a lot of younger aspiring managers watching this, listening to this, and trying to work out how you are doing what you're doing, how you got to where you are. Where did it all start for you? How did you start in the music industry?
So I played in a band. I met Dave, actually, my business partner, when I was 13 in New Zealand at school. We played in a band called Bonja together all through school. Then we moved to Australia, did it professionally for 10 years. So that was my first kind of foot in, I guess. And that's where I could write a novel on the amount of mistakes we made. And but they're important mistakes, because that taught me in the later years on when to say no and do all that sort of stuff. So, but again, yeah, and we played all the venues that we sent our artists in, or a lot of the festivals and that sort of stuff. So I got a very real introduction on how to basically have a professional career in Australia. And from there, obviously we were self-managed. And then from there, got the job at 123 Agency and started looking after acts like Nairi and a bunch of stuff.
Can I just ask, just on that, getting your job at 123 Agency, your first salary in the music industry, how did you get that gig?
Damo texted me. I was working at a photography company part-time, and I just got a text one night. Had just started it and said, "Do you want a job? Ha ha." And I was like, "No, man, I'm good. I'm in a band. I'm busking. I'm working, whatever." And then on the Monday, I texted him. I said, "Yeah, I'm super keen. What do I do?" And then I just went and bought a laptop and showed up at the office, and away we went. It was just kind of plug in and go. And yeah, I loved it. I just loved it. I loved going on the other side of the fence and just diving in and helping artists. And after about a year, things started to kind of pick up, and it just felt like I wanted to be an agent, and that ambition kind of wore off pretty quick, and I really felt a passion for management. And in 2013, Dave and I launched Lemon Tree Music, and our first client was Pierce Brothers, and we just threw the kitchen sink at it. We they'd sold 50,000 EPs busking, and we just truly believed that it could be a global thing. And today they do really great numbers in Europe and all that sort of stuff, and they're still on the roster, and they're amazing boys. So I guess it's just been going from band to agent to management, but always kind of doing the management thing and just learning along the way, and making just a lot of mistakes. Like, I'm not one of those people that says a mistake's a bad thing. Like, I think it's a good thing. Just don't make the same mistake twice and all that sort of stuff. It's just how you learn. And for the young managers, it's just a matter of get out there and meet people and immerse yourself in the scene and see good acts and find a mentor. I think that's incredibly important early on as well. Very fortunate to have a mentor too, and just, really soak up the advice and have that attitude of you can take over the world, but you just got to be very respectful doing it and do it your way. Don't do it the way that everyone tells you to do it as well. There's a blueprint for it, but then you got to take that blueprint and make it your own thing. And that's the hardest thing to do and still cut through, because there's a lot of noise, there's a lot of music, and you've just got to think in your mind. You got to find the most innovative way possible and how to get from A to B without doing what everyone else is doing. And for us, it was buskers. It was going global early to get that perception that things were going better than they are overseas than back home. And then the press writes about you more, and give Triple J everything early, because obviously they sponsor all the festivals and they're great people and they're not the devil, you know what I mean? It's like that they're made out to be this big scary thing, but they're just actually great people shining a light on an incredible array of Australian talent. So I don't know, we could talk for days on this stuff, but yeah, just work as hard as you can, clear your inbox before everyone else gets into the office, so you're being proactive instead of chasing your tail. I mean, if you do that an hour before everyone else gets there every day, you're already ahead of the game. 5 hours a week, but over a year, that's a lot of time. So, and don't be afraid to pick up the phone, and obviously don't be annoying. There's that fine line of emailing someone and then following up too much, as I'm sure you get plenty of, Luke, but just be respectful and be a good person, and, just protect your reputation, because that's all we've all got at the end of the day.
It's funny to hear the thread of your main advice is to fucking hustle, basically. If I was to summarize it, it's work really hard. And we've spoken about this a few times on this podcast, first with John Watson, then with Jadden, with their own respective episodes. And both of them work extremely hard. And you look at the most successful managers and the most successful operators, they're very, very hard workers. And to hear you echo that as well is really reaffirming the idea of literally getting the office an hour before everybody else, clear your inbox out so you can be in front of it. And that is what I think separates most people from the exceptional people. And I think if you are a manager or an aspiring person in the music industry during this COVID time, now is the time to really separate yourself. If you can work harder than everybody else when it's really a level playing field, like we said, everyone's at home, everyone's doing the same shit. You can either be playing PlayStation or having drunk Zoom calls with your mates, or you can fucking get ahead of everybody and really capitalize on the idea that now's your chance to pounce, and it's not a chance to fucking grovel in the losses and the sadness. I think that's super inspiring, and I think it's really consistent with every successful person we speak to on this podcast.
100%, and find yourself a good team, because they're the ones you fall back on when times are really hard, which you will have plenty of, and they're the times that you can celebrate your wins with as well. And obviously don't get too ahead of yourself with the wins, and that's something we never do. Like, if we get a win, it's like, great, awesome, thank you, great work, and you know, all that sort of stuff. But then you've got to always think what's next, not, hey, let's have a party because this happened. It's like, this is incredible, but our long-term goal is this, and we're another inch of getting there, basically. And I think if you don't lose sight of that and you don't get too involved in what you're doing, because taking a step back and having, like, I have Sundays off, for example, having that Sunday off to really refresh, hang out with your family and all that sort of stuff, I think it's incredibly important because you get perspective and then you start the week fresh. But yeah, just there's no right or wrong, and just get stuck in. Like, just the only way to give this thing a crack is just to start tomorrow. It's like, stop putting stuff off.
I just want to unpick that don't over celebrate sentiment. And I guess by inverse, don't over mourn when things go bad. How, as a manager, I mean, artist managers can effectively be counselors 80% of the time with their artists. And, you know, without spoiling the, I guess the story, is that Tones talks about how she's felt getting absolutely attacked and insulted online by, you know, if you're going to get that big, that's going to happen, right? So as a manager, how do you often talk to your artists about, hey, this amazing thing has happened and everyone's praising you, but don't get too excited, because if your emotional mood is dependent on everyone's celebration of you, you're going to be too adversely affected when everybody's criticizing you. So if your whole mood is hinged on other people's responses, then you're not in control of your own mood and your own perception of your own worth. How do you manage that? How is that? How do you talk to your artists and work and navigate through all the fact that they're always going to be under the public spotlight, massively criticized or massively praised, and there's very little in between?
It's incredibly difficult, to be completely honest, because as an artist themselves, you get probably 10, 20, I don't know, hundreds of no's, and then you get that one little yes. And that one little yes, that one door opens, and it could lead to that thing, and then it could lead to one interview or a review, and then the review goes bad, so you're back to your 100 no's. So our thing's always been, when you get that one yes, make that yes count. And in terms of talking to artists and stuff, I mean, yeah, you've just got to tell them that you're there for them, you know, you care about them, that you love them, and you've got to be there with them through the thick and the thin. Like, there's no other way around it, and you can't kind of school anything else other than that, except for the fact that, yeah, it's an incredibly tough gig. I used to say, like, 100 million people love you to 100 million people hate them. You know, it's like, it's one of those horrible, horrible things with the internet age and people sitting in dark rooms and typing horrible shit about people, and it makes my blood boil. And there's been so many comments with our artists online that I've seen, and I just want to reply, and but that's just feeding what they want. They're trolls. And I think now more than ever, I'm hoping that our artists see that, they see out the bullshit. And when you play a festival and there's 20,000 people singing your words back, or when you write a song and you get X amount of streams or whatever it may be, I hope there's more joys than there are the cons, I guess. And mental health's a huge thing, and it's massive, and it's something that I don't really know the answer to that question, except for just to let them know that you're sincerely there for them. And sometimes you've got to, you know, clear the deck and just do whatever you can to help, I guess. It's going back to earlier, like, management's not just set this up and do that and do this. It's like you're like essentially a family member. It's like a marriage. And it's 24/7 and all encompassing. And that's one of the brutal things that comes with it. And you've just got to put things into context and outweigh that, you know, the cover of Rolling Stone is one of the most prestigious things. And I mean, you know, people used to read that thing growing up, and if someone online comments one bad thing, I don't know. I just think there's a pros and cons list for everything, and you just got to do all you can to be there for them, I guess, is the long of it.
Regan, thank you so much for your time today. Incredibly insightful. I understand some of the questions weren't easy to answer. You did exceptionally well. We end every podcast at Fear at the Top the same way, by asking whoever's on, what is the biggest mistake they've made and what can we learn from it?
Jeez, I thought about this on the weekend and what I'd say. And there were just that many mistakes. To be honest, I couldn't think of the best one. But probably looking back is knowing when to stop before you burn out. And my mistake was I went too hard for too long and burnt out. So learn how to delegate early. It's not, don't look at it like a negative or that you're not doing your job good enough to delegate to someone else. Just really embrace that and look after your mental health, look after, you know, you remember that you're a human being as well, and managers often get thrown in the pot, and it can be pretty hectic. But at the same time, you've just got to remember to take a step back and get help. You know, I mean, I had to see a psychologist and take all these supplements and do all this stuff because all my adrenals and stuff were completely shot. I was burnt out, and you only know if you're burnt out until you physically get there, because you think, oh no, I'm fine, or whatever. So the main message is, my biggest mistake was not knowing when to ask for help and not knowing when to put my hand up and go, you know what, this is too much, and I'm working too much, and I need to delegate, and I need to help. So if you can identify that before you do crash and burn, then I think that's an incredibly important thing. And just to look after yourself, remember that you're a human being as well, and you know, you got a heartbeat, and you got a family, you got friends, and if you can navigate through all this stuff with your reputation in good order, and you know, smile at the end of it, and smile and wave and all that sort of stuff, then you're doing well. But yeah, don't wait until it's too late. Yeah, identify those signs early, and just look after yourself, I guess.
Regan, thank you so much for your time. The Australian music industry as a whole has hugely benefited from the fact that you have taken management on with both hands. We are grateful as fans and as colleagues. Thank you so much, mate. We wish you all the best and all the success.
Thank you very much for having me, Luke. Really appreciate it, mate.